Former and second longest serving Governor of New South Wales, just short of Sir Roden Cutler, is his record. I'm proud to say 10 years ago you spoke at my induction here at Wesley Mission, and so we're always delighted to have you here. Yes. Born in Narrandera, tell us a little bit about those early days, because it's a very different place than Sydney and the part of life that you've shared over these past years.
Yes, well, my mother was a Sydney girl from a well-established family. She fell in love with a medical student who came from Beirut, whose father and uncle were both graduates of the American university there. They'd been formed by descendants of the Scottish Enlightenment. Father came on a visit to Sydney on the boat. They were a young couple coming back to Australia from their honeymoon. They were shocked to hear he didn't know anyone in Australia. You know, he was shy but adventurous, so they introduced him to their family, and he immediately fell in love with Victoria, the comely, gentle, talented person that he married, and he stayed in Australia, established a retail business.
Sometimes when you have a guest, you look at their achievements. I didn't have enough paper here, really, you know, to be able to list all the achievements and awards that have been given to you. But I think it would have been special, having been at the University of Sydney, to be Chancellor at the university.
Oh, well, I never entertained such ambitions. In fact, the only ambition I ever had, and you can understand this growing up in an idyllic town such as Narrandera, was to go on living in the glorious region of the Riverina, marry a farmer and have lots of children. Look what happened to me.
And all of that is very, very different. It changed. You married somebody who, in his own right, has much. He was, of course, Lord Mayor in this city and involved in that room, but also in sport too. And I suspect, though I wouldn't presume this, that there'll be times when the two of you are there, when one of the men wants to take your husband in the corner and have a chat about rugby, never mind what else is going on.
That remains to this day after 57 years of marriage.
The Christian faith was very much part of your family life, and I know that when we talked together, it was natural. It wasn't something that was forced upon you. It was a natural atmosphere at home.
Well, that's right, indeed. My mother often used to, just in her admonishments to us, and she was witty and fun, she'd say, "Go to the ant, thou sluggard, learn his ways and be wise." You know, she could always quote something, "Honour thy father and thy mother, so thy days," you know. We say, "Oh, Mum." Yeah.
Prior to becoming the Governor of New South Wales, you had that important position as Clinical Director of Mental Health Services in the central Sydney area. Mental health has been a major focus of your medical career, and it was in very changing times. We went through the Richmond report, we went through changes. How would you see that arena now in the light of your own work?
Well, I was very privileged to be able to move into mental health because I did so as a form of protest. I was appalled and hurt by the way mentally ill people were not being properly understood. They were being given medication and so forth, and ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, but it wasn't so frequently that they were asked, where did your distress, where did your depression begin? How did it start? Did anything go wrong in your childhood? And I realised much later, after I'd moved into psychiatry, that probably going into that area, of which I had no intention in the beginning, was probably overdetermined by one of my beloved first cousins, who'd gone from one of Australia's finest and oldest boarding schools to the jungles of Bougainville in the Japanese War, you know, from the King's School to the jungles, and had been awarded a military medal for bravery, and on return to Australia had endless treatment for depression, including ECT, And it was only in recent years when I was able to quietly ask at the Australian War Museum, could I see the record, that I understood why. That becoming a hero, in inverted commas, had been a cost to his sense of respect for human life in saving his battalion. He'd had to inflict death on the Japanese, and he was never able to live with that. So the depression and the inability to ever adequately readjust. Certainly he went back to work, he was a writer, a journalist, etc. But a sensitive and wonderful human being who couldn't live with what he'd been compelled to do in order to save his men.
And almost everything that we do at Wesley Mission in one way or another is impacted by the mental health issue.